The Badlands of the American Southwest are a testament to time's cruelty. Here, the sun is a hammer and the wind a chisel, stripping the earth down to its skeletal remains. For Dr. Elias Thorne, a geologist who had spent his career mapping predictable layers of rock, this landscape was a comfortable, if harsh, open book. But the coordinates he held in his hand pointed to a page that had been torn out of history. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood Elena Vance, a cryptographer whose work usually involved satellite data and Cold War ciphers, not dusty canyons. They stood at the edge of a depression in the earth, a hidden valley shielded by jagged mesas that didn't appear on any modern map. The satellite readings were right, Elena whispered, adjusting her polarized goggles. Look at the refraction. Below them, the valley didn't look like the rest of the desert. It shimmered. Protruding from the red dust were massive, fallen pillars. To the untrained eye, they were just logs, the remnants of a prehistoric forest turned to stone millions of years ago. But Elias saw the anomaly immediately. They aren't scattered, Elias said, his voice dry. They're aligned. In a natural petrified forest, the trees fall where they die chaotic and random. Here, the massive stone logs, some 10 feet in diameter, lay in perfect concentric circles, spiraling inward toward a dark maw in the center of the valley floor. It looked less like a forest and more like a circuit board printed on the crust of the earth. They began their descent. The heat was oppressive, but as they crossed the threshold of the first ring of stone trees, the air grew instantly cooler. Elias ran a gloved hand over the bark of a fallen giant. It was polished smooth, not by wind, but by something else. The texture was like glass. Elias, Elena called out. She was kneeling beside a fractured log, shining a UV light onto its cross-section. The dendrochronology. The tree rings. Look at the spacing. Elias leaned in. Tree rings usually vary based on rainfall and seasons, wide for wet years, thin for dry. These rings were different. They alternated in a rigid, binary pattern. Thick, thin, thin, thick. It was rhythmic. It was mathematical. It's not climate data, Elena said, her voice trembling with the thrill of discovery. It's code. The spiral of trees led them to the center of the valley, where the earth opened up into a cavern. This was the crystal labyrinth. Unlike natural caves, the walls here were lined with the exposed root systems of the petrified giants above. The roots hadn't withered. They had fused together, forming a lattice of translucent quartz that pulsed with a faint piezoelectric. They clicked on their headlamps and descended into the dark. The geologic dating puts this forest at 200 million years old, Elias muttered, his scientific mind warring with the reality before him. But this structure... this implies intent. Who builds a library out of a forest? Someone who knew that paper burns and stone erodes, Elena replied. But crystals grow. Crystals store energy. If you wanted to leave a message that would outlast a geological epoch, this is how you do it. As they ventured deeper, the tunnel widened into a vast, cathedral-like chamber. The air was thick with ozone. The roots hanging from the ceiling were crystalline stalactites, dripping not water, but a viscous glowing fluid that hardened the moment it touched the floor. Elias set up his equipment, a laser scanner, to map the room. As the laser swept across the walls, the crystal roots reacted. They flared with light, refracting the red laser beam into a spectrum of colors that danced across the chamber. It's photosensitive, Elias realized. The whole cave. It's a reactive medium. Elena walked toward a massive central pillar, a single petrified trunk that connected the floor to the ceiling. It was translucent, glowing with a soft amber hue. Suspended inside the quartz were perfect, preserved insects, leaves, and seeds, but arranged in a spiral, a double helix. It's a DNA strand, Elena breathed. Represented macroscopically. Elias, this isn't just a shelter. It's an arc. Elena pulled out a frequency modulator. If the rings are binary, maybe the crystals are sonic. Quartz is used in radios, watches, sonar. It vibrates. She set the device to scan for low-frequency resonance. Immediately, the speaker crackled. It wasn't static. It was a rhythmic thrumming, like a heartbeat slowed down to the pace of a mountain. She adjusted the pitch, shifting it up into the range of human hearing. Suddenly, a sound filled the chamber choir of harmonics. It wasn't speech, not exactly. It was a pure transfer of emotion and data. Elias fell to his knees, clutching his head. He didn't just hear the sound. Esau, Italiano. Visions flooded his mind. He saw the earth, but the continents were fused pungi. He saw the sky, not blue, but a violet hue. He saw civilization, not of machines and metal, but of biology and light. They grew their cities from the soil. They sang their technology into existence. He saw the cataclysm. An asteroid, a solar flare? The vision was unclear, but he felt the urgency. The gardeners, as his mind named them, realized their time was ending. They couldn't save themselves, so they encoded their knowledge, their understanding of gravity, genetics, and consciousness into the biological lattice of the forest. They accelerated the petrification process, turning their wisdom into stone, burying it to wait for a species evolved enough to listen. Elias? Elena's voice snapped him back. He gasped, looking up. The central pillar was vibrating violently. The light within it shifted from amber to a blinding white. I saw them, Elias whispered. They didn't die out. They changed. They became the Earth. Elena was frantically recording the light patterns on her data. The sequence is repeating. It's a primer. It's teaching us how to read the forest. Elias, if we can decode this, we could unlock energy technologies that make fossil fuels look like burning twigs. We could understand medicine at a cellular level. But Elias stood up, a look of profound sorrow on his face. He looked around the shimmering cathedral. He saw its fragility. We can't, Elias said. Elena stopped. What? This is the greatest discovery in human history. Exactly. Elias gestured to the entrance. Think about who funded this expedition. Think about what our world does with resources. If we report this, they won't treat it as a library. They'll treat it as a mine. They'll blast this valley apart to harvest the quartz for processors and weapons. We won't learn from the ancient knowledge. We'll cannibalize it. The humming grew louder, almost warningly. The crystal labyrinth seemed to sense their intent. Elena looked at her data, then at the magnificent, glowing roots. She realized he was right. The civilization that built this had lived in harmony with the natural world. To expose them to the industrial machinery of the 21st century would be the final insult. We have the recording, Elena said softly. The primer. That's enough for one lifetime. We can study the language without exposing the source. Elias nodded. We seal it. We claim the survey was a failure. Unstable terrain. They climbed out of the labyrinth just as the sun began to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the Badlands. As they reached the rim of the valley, a low rumble shook the ground. The entrance to the cave collapsed inward, a landslide of red dust and rock burying the spiral of trees. The labyrinth had protected itself. Elias and Elena stood in silence, the wind whipping at their clothes. They carried no physical artifacts, no samples of the crystal wood. But in Elena's drive was a string of data that would take decades to decrypt. And in Elias's mind was the memory of a violet sky and a song that could build cities. They walked back to their rover, leaving the valley to its silence. The petrified forest slept on, a hard drive of stone waiting for a time when humanity was ready not just to take, but to listen. Thank you for watching. What would you have done in their position? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe for more.